Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I can't tell you how glad I am to be back talking about something interesting that isn't necessarily controversial. Granted, there are concerns, which is why I happen to be here recording this, but taking into account the events of the weekend, this feels a bit like a breath of fresh air. Also, I decided to change things up a bit with the thumbnails and intro. I suppose I just didn't like the feel of the thumbnails I've been using, and I've never been 100% happy with them. And while I did pay a graphic artist to create the template for me, sometimes if you want something you can be happy with, you'll just have to do it yourself. So I'm interested in your feedback. Let me know down in the comments. Now, the story surrounding the crowdfunding of Homeworld 3 has been one of the most requested topics that people have emailed and DM'd me about over the past couple of days. As some of those concerns I think I can lay to rest, others I think should just be a bit of caveat emptor. And I know some of you will be saying this isn't worthwhile content because it doesn't really contain any sort of massive issue. Well, this not being a massive problem isn't a bad thing. Sometimes it's more about the information than it is about anything else, and it also gives me a bit of a palate cleanser and allows me to offer up some opinions on something that I find to be interesting without it being a massive controversy. Because gaming shouldn't always be a terrific ordeal. Sometimes gaming can be fun, and to be quite honest, I rather prefer it that way. However, after I had a chance to think on it, there is some interesting goings-on in regards to this with Randy Pitchford, but let's lay everything out before I dive into that. Now, as always, any publicly available sources will be in the description down below. So just to catch everyone up to speed, if you haven't heard of the Homeworld video games, you are probably missing out. Homeworld is considered a classic, and Homeworld 2 is also highly regarded. The prequel game, Homeworld Deserts of Karak, was quite well done in its own right, and as such, the recently announced sequel to the beloved franchise, Homeworld 3, has some pretty big shoes to fill. Now, I've compiled a list of particular concerns that people have raised with me regarding the game and its crowdfunding campaign. First, we have the $1 donation goal on Fig. The second, a lack of clearly defined rewards for the collector's edition of the game, which is a backer reward for some tiers. And third, early access to Homeworld Mobile and whether or not it will be free to play. And fourth, crowdfunded investing as opposed to basic crowdfunding. Now, in that regard, I thought it would be worthwhile to get what information there is in regards to these 4 points, and then I'll give some of my own thoughts on them. Now, firstly, in regards to the $1 donation goal, on the crowdfunding site, the developers list that reason as the following. Because we want it to be clear that the game is on a solid foundation funding-wise. We're partnering with Fig to give back to longtime fans who have sustained Homeworld for 20 years by giving them a chance to invest in Homeworld 3's success and help us understand the game they've been dreaming about. There are some additional reasons there in my opinion, but we'll circle back to that after I finish laying everything out. In regards to the second point, the undefined collector's edition, the developers state, since we're still a ways out from launch, we want your help with what should be in the collector's edition. We put a big list of ideas in the backer survey for you to check out, so tell us what you want to see and we'll set about making it a great box of goodies for the Homeworld community. Now, the third point, whether or not the Homeworld mobile game will be free to play. So far, no information in that regard has been released, and many are speculating that it will indeed be free to play. In all likelihood, that speculation will probably be correct. Then there's the fourth point, which is actually a bit interesting to me. Crowdfunded investing. Now the people that reached out to me treated this as new information, but Fig, as a crowdfunding site, has, to my knowledge, always offered an investor program for video games. How this works is people can invest at a rate of $500 per share with a maximum amount of shares being set at $10 million worth. This is working capital that is provided to the developers for the purposes of creating the game. A Fig then has a sliding revenue share with a base rate of 14% of the sales receipts plus a sliding scale based upon the total dollar amount raised through the investment program. This ranges from 1% up to 11% additional on top of the 14% base for a maximum combined percentage of 25%. Fig then takes its 14 to 25% revenue share and pays out 85% of those funds to the individual investors, keeping 15% profit for themselves. And that seems quite fair and equitable. But bear in mind, we're dealing with Gearbox, and that means Randy Pitchford. So of course, everything might not be quite as it seems. You see, while Homeworld 3 is being developed by Blackbird Interactive, it is being published by Gearbox Software's publishing arm, and it is Gearbox Publishing that has opted to put the game up for both crowdfunding and crowd investing. This is important because as of March 2018, Randy Pitchford has been a member of the advisory board for Fig.co. This means that the company that is owned by Randy Pitchford is crowdfunding and crowd investing their game with another company where Randy Pitchford also stands to make a fair amount of additional profit. That's the basic gist of things, and while I point out this curiosity with Randy Pitchford double dipping for some additional scratch, I don't see any large controversy here, as I said. When it comes to the $1 goal, it's because you have to have a minimum dollar amount to be able to create the crowdfunding page, and it would seem that it is designed primarily to serve dual purpose of allowing people to back the game if they so choose and get some additional digital and real-world items for their trouble, and also to take some of the financial pressure off of Gearbox and ensure that no funding issues arise. And of course, the dual purpose of Randy Pitchford directly personally profiting off of the crowdfunding campaign itself outside of his ownership role of Gearbox Publishing. The second point, with the undefined collector's edition, can be a bit trickier, and I personally am not a fan of buying into something that isn't clearly defined. However, again, the cause for concern here is, I think, relatively minimal. There will be a list of items that will basically be voted on, which actually stands a greater chance of items that longtime fans of the series would want to see, and if there wasn't a voting system in place, it would all be predetermined by the publishers. Now, this isn't the same thing as a loot box or anything like that. It's genuine engagement with the backers, and it's something that I see as potentially being a positive thing as long as there are enough items there to be voted upon to make the collector's edition worthwhile. And that's the only real caveat I see there. So be aware that might not be the case. It's probably fine though. In regards to the mobile game, well, my opinion on this is that I would be absolutely amazed if the game wasn't free to play with all of your traditional mobile game monetization schemes firmly in place, especially considering how popular such things are in Eastern countries. To be honest, from a financial standpoint, they would be foolish to do otherwise. So just expect the mobile game to be geared more towards the Eastern market than the Western one. And fourth, the crowd investing. Now, originally, I thought this was a very wise move on the part of FIG to include this capacity for investment opportunities for those with deep enough pockets that feel bold enough to do so. If it's one thing that Star Citizen has taught us over the years, is that there are a great many gamers out there with plenty of money that are more than willing to rapaciously throw that money at even a promise of a game, and this was just good business sense on their part. As for good old Randy Pitchford double-dipping on the profits, I don't see anything malicious involved here, just your run-of-the-mill corporate greed at play. It is Randy Pitchford, after all. That man does love a bit of sleight of hand, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. He's just juggling things around to maximize his own personal profits off of the back of the game. As long as the game is created and it does well, I don't really see the harm in it. It even allows those that would choose to invest to be able to stand to earn a little extra money as well. So there we have it. Bit of a matter-of-fact video this time through. Yeah, Randy Pitchford is still a bit of a slime in my book. I see this and I just shrug with a very oh well sort of feeling. Now, all of this comes across as rather benign to me. While some people have their concerns, I think those concerns are brought about by a combination of PTSD from the AAA industry coupled with the fact that this is Randy Pitchford, and with that man being involved, of course there will be some shenanigans and sleight of hand going on. But in this case, it's all pretty minor, all things considered. So if you plan on backing Homeworld 3, I hope this helps keep you a bit more informed. I see nothing to dissuade anyone, but individual opinions will vary. However, so far the Homeworld series has been treated with the respect that it's due, and I see that continuing here. So there we have it. No controversy today, but then again, it can't always be bad news, and sometimes it's good just to be able to run through some information and have some honest dialogue on some things that are going on. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.